Hello, this is Chris with Phoenix Gaming. Today we're going to talk about Warhammer Old World and the movement phase. We're going to do an overview of everything that can happen in the movement phase. We're also going to cover charging and reactions, wheeling and formations, and other maneuvers. This is only going to be part one of the movement phase. The movement phase is very complicated and deep, so it's going to require two videos in order to keep them in a manageable time frame so that we are not having hour-long videos to teach people stuff. My goal is to try to do these in 10 to 15-minute chunks now and try to keep the video a little bit shorter than they have been historically when teaching things. Also, another quick plug, if you like Old World and you like movement trays, there will be some Amazon links in the description so that you can buy movement trays that'll work with your models. I do use them. I do have them. I also have the Games Workshop modular ones, which are fantastic. So if you want to support me and you need movement trays, that's a great way to do it. The movement phase, it starts with declaring charges and charge reactions, and then all chargers are rolled and moved, and then compulsory moves are made, then remaining moves are made, and then conveyance spells may be cast at any point in the remaining moves portion of the movement phase. Declaring charges and reactions. Unless otherwise stated, charging is not mandatory. There are abilities such as Impetuous that make it mandatory. It is effectively the only way to get into combat. There are probably others. I haven't dug into all of them yet, but for the most part, that's the only way you're going to be able to get within an inch of any enemy models and get into engagement range or combat. To declare a charge, the charging unit must have line of sight of the target. It must declare it against a unit in the charging unit's front arc, and it must be within charge range of the target unit. This means that if I want to charge you, my unit has to be able to see you. You have to be in my front arc, and then you have to be within charge range, which is 6 plus your movement in inches. So if your movement is 4, it's going to be within 10 inches. In addition, units that are engaged or that rallied in the strategy phase of the same turn or that are fleeing may not declare a charge. Units in a marching column may declare a charge, but may not make a charge move. And this is interesting because I'm not sure what the application of this is yet. I haven't played enough games to see how this is important to know, but it is written in the rules, so it's important that we make sure everybody knows it. I just don't know the why yet. You may not declare an impossible charge, for example, if the enemy is outside of charge range or line of sight. In most situations, you may only declare a charge against one enemy unit. If you cannot charge the intended target without engaging or making contact with another unit, then you declare charges against both units. If you can charge one unit, you're only allowed to charge one unit. If you have to charge two, then you can charge two. That's all that means. Once active player has declared all of their charges, the inactive player declares charge reactions for each of the charged targets, and then you resolve the reactions one at a time. What this means is if I'm charging with 5 units, I'll actually declare charges with all 5 of them, and then you get to decide where you want to do your reactions one at a time. There are 3 core charge reactions. There are certain abilities that give you access to different ones. You can hold, which is just standing the ground and receiving the charge, and this is pretty much the default. So if you forget to do a charge reaction, you just hold. Stand and shoot. If the unit is armed with missile weapons and can draw line of sight to the charging unit, it may stand and shoot. To stand and shoot, the charge distance must be greater than the charging unit's movement characteristic. If the unit is able to stand and shoot, it will make attacks with its missile weapons even if the charging unit is outside of its shooting range, and then stand and shoot incurs a -1 penalty to hit rolls. Charging units will not have to make panic tests from stand and shoot casualties, and then fleeing units and units already engaged in combat cannot stand and shoot. Most of this is pretty straightforward and it makes sense. The first thing we want to talk about with this, though, is to stand and shoot, the charge distance must be greater than the charging unit's movement. So if you're on cavalry and it's a 10-inch charge, but your movement's 9, I can stand and shoot. If you're on cavalry and it's an 8-inch charge and your movement's 9, I cannot stand and shoot. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Quick shot, I believe, allows you to stand and shoot even if you're within the movement characteristic. But for the most part, again, this is the core rule. Flee reactions can be declared by any unit that is not already engaged in combat. Units that are already fleeing must flee when charged. To flee, the unit pivots on its center, facing directly away from the charging unit, and then it immediately makes a flee move. And a flee move is made by rolling 2d6, and the result is the number of inches moved. And then this move must be straight ahead. You must move the full distance, even if doing so would take you off the battlefield. And then may change direction by pivoting only if required to move around impassable terrain. If you charge and I flee, effectively what happens is I just do a 180 right there on the board, pivoting on the center, and then I move directly away from the charging unit. That's all that means. Charge reactions and multiple charging units. A unit may only stand and shoot in response to one charge per turn, even if charged by multiple units. Once all charges would be declared, the inactive player may choose which charging unit to stand and shoot at, but it must hold against the other units. If the target unit chooses to flee, it will flee directly away from the unit with the highest unit strength. If two units have the same unit strength, randomly determine which unit. If I charge your one unit with 3 of mine, I can only stand and shoot one of them, and then I have to hold against the rest. However, if I flee away from the scariest one. And by scariest, it's whoever has the highest unit strength, which in most situations is just going to be the model count. Blocks of infantry have a unit strength equal to their model count. Charge moves. So you determine your charge range. For most units, this will be done by rolling 2 dice. You discard the lowest and then add the result to the unit's movement characteristic. Rules like Swift Stride alter the charge range, but this is the core rule. The unit then makes a charge move. If the charge range doesn't allow the charging unit to end in base to base with the target of the charge fails. If it fails, you still move, but you only move a number of inches equal to the die roll. If it doesn't fail, then you just complete the charge move. When you make a charge move, this can get a little complicated, but a charging unit must attempt to bring as many models into contact with the enemy unit as possible. You must do so by moving the shortest possible route to reach your target, and then you move forward in a straight line if possible, and then after moving, you align to the target. We're going to dig into this in just a minute, but there's a few other things we need to talk about first. A charging unit may only perform a wheel maneuver during a charge, and only once, but it can at any point during the charge. So you're allowed one free wheel while you charge, and by free I just mean it. You still have to measure the movement. You're allowed one wheel during the charge. You don't have to perform the wheel if doing so would make you fail the charge or prevent another charging unit from completing the charge. And that's important. If you've got 2 units charging a single unit, you're allowed to move and break the previous rules we just talked about in order to allow the second unit to charge. So I could actually wheel to not maximize the number of models in contact so that I could allow my other unit to get into combat. The charging unit stops moving as soon as the 2 units touch base, regardless of alignment, after which you will close the door, which is an old fantasy term, or align to the enemy. And this is a free wheel, a truly free wheel. And we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail now. In this scenario, the knights want to charge the footmen. You would measure this distance. For this example, we're going to say that the charge distance is 6 inches. You declare your charge, and the knights will move 9 inches, and the charge distance is 6. The knights roll their charge. They have swift stride, so they'll actually roll 3 dice, keeping the 2 highest, if I remember correctly. And nobody's surprised, they complete the charge. The process states that I must move forward as directly as possible, but I'm allowed a single wheel, not will, again, sorry for the spelling error, and am obligated to make it in order to maximize the number of models in combat. What I will have to do is I will have to pivot here and then basically just move like this. Because what we need to do is make sure all of them are in combat. If we move straight forward, this handsome fella here won't be in combat because they will move like this. and that would cut one person out of combat. What we want to do, like I said, is we want to wheel so that at the end of the move, we've pivoted on this corner, and now we have everybody in combat. Moving a unit and closing the door with the move and wheel in place, the unit stops as soon as it contacts the enemy unit, and then you get to align to the unit or close the door. And again, all that means is when we make this charge, we want to pivot, we wheel, and then we're going to end up with this kind of triangle, right? Well, then we just close this distance and it's free. So we make our wheel, like I said, and then we move straight forward, which will put this fella right here in position to tag that fella. Now that they are touching, I have to close the gap, right? Right here, just like I said. And now everybody's in combat. So that's how moving units and closing the door or aligning to the enemy works, and that's how you would have to maximize to get as many into combat as you could. Flank and rear charges. A charge may only end in the target unit's flank or rear if the majority of the charging unit lies in the target's flank or rear respectively. And this is pretty straightforward. Your front arc is just a 45 from your bases, and then your side and rear is the same. And the majority of your unit has to be in whatever arc you're going to end the charge in. What this does mean is that you can't roll super high on the charge and then snake around and hit somebody in the side, even if you did it with just a single wheel. If you're in the front, you have to charge the front. If there's anything else you need to know about this or charging, let me know in the comments, and I will be happy to cover it in another video. Compulsory moves are mandatory moves or any rules that take place in the compulsory move subphase. Units that are fleeing and have not rallied will make flee moves at this time. And it works just like we talked about during charge reactions. And then compulsory moves or rules are also triggered, and they are resolved in whatever order the active player wishes. At which point you are free to make your remaining moves, which lets you cast conveyance spells. Any other units on the table may now make their remaining moves, and maneuvers and things like that will be covered in more detail in its own video. Like I said, there's a lot happening, and I want to keep these to about 10 to 15 minutes rather than the way my older 40K videos would be 30 to 45 minutes. I want to keep them as short as possible and just give you what you need to know to interact with the specific thing we're discussing. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, make sure you subscribe. Also, make sure you share it. We are getting close to 700 subscribers. And again, we're growing as a community. I appreciate that a lot. Hey, we've got a YouTube member, Kevin W. Big shout out to you. I appreciate it, man. Hatchlings, The Real Donnie G. Phoenixes, Jamie, thank you. And then Immortals, Lord Wellingstone, Danny Boy, and Captain Too Tall. You guys are phenomenal. Again, everybody's support is great, and it is very appreciated, and it does allow me to continue to run local events because it helps me get terrain and things of that nature. So, again, thank you so much.